That's it.
Who's that? Okay.
The door should stop.
Thanks for coming, everybody. So we're going to talk a little bit about FirstLookAtDotNet5, version 5 vNext, and sort of Visual Studio 2015, and some of the other gubbins that's been going on around it. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to build a very simple web API using the new tools, and then I'm going to throw in just an MVC page. So I'm not going to go into the details of actually building the pages and the business logic behind the APIs and things like that, because to be honest, that hasn't changed a lot. It's mainly the kind of the infrastructure around it that's changed. So start. This is 2015. It looks not a whole lot different to 2012 or 2013 if you've used it. This thing up here is new. You've not used 2013. Nice little quick launch thing that you can do. You do new products and stuff like that. You do file names, stuff like that.
So sublime.
Yes, very sublime.
Yeah, so I suppose there's a massive caveat to start all this. Microsoft have even acknowledged themselves, we have borrowed all the ideas from other things. So they did that with C# and Java. They've done it again. So you'll start seeing a lot of similarities between the Node world. They've tried to modularize a lot or everything. Things are open source. Things will be mentioned, I'm sure, as we go through. But
feel free to say
anything. And it's also just worth bearing in mind right from the start the difference between the different parts of it. Over the years, we've always kind of like, oh, well, we'll use Visual Studio 12, and that will mean you've got the latest version of stuff. And over the years, we've gone away from that, and things like C# is no longer in line with ASP.NET, so you've got ASP.NET 4.5 and version 5, while C# is off in a different direction. So there's C# 6 on the horizon, and there's ASP.NET, what's been called vNext, but they've now started calling it v5. So it's just to bear in mind that vNext is not C# 6. There are new features in that, but then ASP.NET version 5, which is what we're going to talk about more now, is something completely separate.
Okay. It's probably worth adding to that as well, actually, that there's one of the things they've done in the new versions is they've made it much easier for you to tear those pieces apart. So, as we'll see later, ASP has been forcibly removed from anything linking to IIS. And even to Windows and .NET and things. Well, .NET you have to use, but .NET has been detached from Windows now quite a bit. And you can run a lot of stuff, all kinds of stuff. Mac and Linux environments and things like that. And you don't need Visual Studio to do it. There's other editors that work just as well. There's a project to make Sublime have IntelliSense.NET using exactly the same tools that Visual Studio uses. It's quite cool.
Is that OmniSharp?
So OmniSharp already exists, so OmniSharp plugs in to things like that. I was watching a video yesterday with Scott Hanselman, and he used the phrase, we will be providing a sublime package. So the phrase we suggests that actually Microsoft are either going to take OmniSharp or they're going to do their own or something, but there's be something a bit official from Microsoft.
Well, I do know Scott Hanselman has contributed to OmniSharp, so...
In that case, maybe he's talking from that point.
I think he's on the team, actually.
Yeah.
Maybe I should start talking to Jason Emerson on Facebook a bit more frequently before he gets made really, really rich.
You can use whatever editor you want, if you want. So you'll get IntelliSense. The compiler's standalone, all of that kind of stuff.
Okay, right. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go through creating a small web API, which will probably not work because seems some issues I was having yesterday, which we'll probably have again today.
Yeah, this is all still alpha as
so if things go horribly wrong, I do have one I made earlier. So, so this is all fairly standard. There's new project stuff. There's not a lot changed other than astronaut we're back. Can you all see that, by the way? Because I'm going to struggle to make it any bigger. I'll see what I can do when we're in the app. Okay, let's just call this brown bag 2, because we've already got brown bag 1.
So they said in their video I was watching that these aren't yet final, they haven't decided on names and whatever, but whatever names they do decide on, they'll be rubbish. So don't worry about that.
Yeah.
Marketeers will get their hands on it.
Okay, so this is obviously some fairly new stuff in here in this template thing, including the empty project, which is actually empty, unlike every other empty project ever in Visual Studio. And that's actually the one we're going to pick. Because, this empty one is different to that empty one. That's an old empty one. This is a new empty one. Confusing. Yeah, that's where we are.
But this is an empty one which doesn't bundle jQuery, jQuery UI, and
Five
5.
website.
I shall show you what you get.
The one next to it that said Starter Web, that's one where when you press F5 you'll get a nice pretty, hey, you've made an ASP page, and all that. As Andy says, an empty one is empty.
Yeah, so you have a startup class that has an empty configure. And there's a README file that gets created, but doesn't create that. It's exciting. And there's some project files. This is actually going to be better if I bring this up in here so you can see what's actually in here. So there's some folders to do with IDEs and builds and stuff like that, which you're going to get. There's a solution file which just does very little. Yeah, just as a solution, it says there's a solution with the projects in it. That's just some user option thing. This one's probably the most interesting one in here, the global JSON file, because it tells you where all your sources are. Now this is actually quite important because this is it. Zoom doesn't work on track. That's quite annoying.
Don't matter.
That works.
Bit more.
Bit more. Yeah. Okay, so it just tells you what folders your sources are in. You'll notice there's a JSON file as well, not XML. Okay. Let's dig in a bit further. Well, we haven't got a test folder in here because we haven't added any tests yet. Yeah, there's kproj file, which does what?
Why K?
I don't know. And it did say they might be changing its name, but they've got a core part of the system. It's called K.
Yeah.
It's the K runner. I don't actually know what it means, but I think it means Kestrel, because I think that was the code name.
Kestrel is another thing.
Oh, well, it's not that then. They might change its name, but as I say, it's all still early days. But because they're doing all this out in the open now, with loads of alphas and whatever being released, we have to just bear in mind that this is all changing. So they might yet do a rename on stuff. They probably will, because they've then got a virtual machine called the KVM, which when you Google for that,
It's a version manager.
Version manager, sorry, it gets a little bit confusing. Just a bit.
Actually, it's KVM's quite a well-used acronym in itself.
Exactly.
Okay, so there's a few things in here which are very similar to what used to be in there, but very noticeably there's no list of files. Makes me happy. There's no list of CS files.
Are there CS files yet?
No, even,
Yes, there are one. There is one. But there's nowhere for them to be. Yeah. No, there was just I showed you the class, didn't I? This. Is it two as well? It's certainly more empty than the old one. I'm also going to have to refer to my crib sheet, also known as the tutorial I followed. Yes, okay. So, what else we got here? Project JSON file, which is specifies things
That looks suspiciously like Node Package Manager.
It does, yeah. It has single dependencies in there and frameworks. And a couple of other little bits and bobs. I think these exclusions are to do with the package update project later, which is something I'm not really going to talk about because it's not very well developed yet. But,
yeah, they're trying to get it to a point where it's just like an NPM package. You can publish it and you'll get, I think they're currently calling it a KPM or something else PM or a NuGet PM or something. I think it's all a bit out at the minute.
He said they call it NuGet PM.
I think, yeah. That's the problem they've got. The NuGet names.
right. So let's fire this up just to prove that this actually does something. Yep, it's not happy about something like that.
Yay!
Get an IIS error because there's nothing, absolutely no controllers or anything in there yet. It's by default using IIS Express to host it, which is pretty much the same as it is in 2012 anyway. But we'll change that in a minute. Okay, let's kill that. And add an API. So I'm not going to be able to make the menus any bigger, so you just have to swim. So in the new item thing, there's a whole bunch of stuff that gives away all kinds of things that are supported in the new version. Fairly standard stuff at the top. Then you've got MVC controllers and views and web API controllers. And then you've got Bower, Grunt, and NPM. There's Bower, Grunt, NPM, and Gulp support is all built in. And actually, it's not only built in, and the IntelliSense is really good for it. And uses NPM to get Grunt and Gulp, because you can also use handlebars and the staff showing handlebars templates later on as well. You can actually use all your standard Grunt tools on those, unless the SAS support. So also down here, and CoffeeScript if you're that way inclined.
Someone always bats around.
So I'm just going to do a API controller. Okay. This one. I have to make that very slightly smaller because I don't think you can see. Okay, so we've got an API controller which just has some built-in, some default things in here, some gets, posts, puts, delete, and your verbs supported.
That has a bit of a Sinatra sort of look.
Yep. It's I think it's very based on Fubu rather than, although I think it's based on Sinatra itself actually. So yeah.
They switched
Yeah,
completely.
I'll just get that.
They just switched completely to attribute-based routing that.
Yes.
Thank God.
So yeah, I was going to show that in a moment by doing what Paul just suggested. And there's a package reference missing, which is there.
Go to Project Joseph.
Yeah, so I will do that actually. Yeah. There is an enhanced version of the NuGet Package Manager UI here, which has got a few new features, but you can actually just go in and edit this file directly, which is actually simpler. So,
Notice you get a IntelliSense as you type for packages that are on NPM.
this is where I'm going to run the MVC. MVC.
And then it will list all the versions.
Instances and versions.
And you can do things like star and stuff like that, the latest version and that kind of.
And it starts up.
You still got no control.
Anyone notice what port it was on? Yeah. Just picks one random and create a project. Is this going to work? No. Remember I said that there's going to be some things I miss?
You say that.
You need to build it.
No. You don't need to build it.
Yeah, so while Andy figures that out, yeah, you don't need to build anymore. You can still build, you can still, when you do Control-Shift-B in your Visual Studio, it will run through what they jokingly call, it'll do spell checking for you. So it'll do a build so it can give you the red errors at the bottom. But when you actually deploy it, you don't need to actually build it as a binary. It'll just deploy the source and on first run, build and chuck it into memory, and it'll just leave it in memory, rather than loading it from DLLs into memory. At the minute it's quite slow, but that's an area that is to do for optimization. But it means that you then got the whole, you can then change something in, we're all used to Razor files we can change and just press F5, well now you can do exactly the same for a CS file, change it, press F5.
So is that regardless of whether you package the framework version with your application then? Because that does, so Node.js work, if you've not non-compiled, there's potential that depending on the environment you deploy to, you could actually have different behaviour based on the deployment package based on the framework.
That's really annoying, I can't understand the word you just said. That's right next to my head.
So with DLLs, you generally have decent guarantee that the way it runs in each environment is going to be the same.
Yeah.
But with not compiling until runtime, potentially depending on the configuration of the server.
Right, yes, I know what you're saying. So what also happened when you package the solution up, it's now much more like Node, where you'll have a whole packages folder, and in that packages folder is an entire copy of .NET, and what they're calling it .NET Core, which is kind of what you've got classic style, and then there's the .NET Core, and they're currently calling it Cloud Optimized, which is a stripped down version, which doesn't have all of your front end requirements, so it won't have system.drawing and stuff like that, because it's all just server side. Those will be packaged, well, whichever one you select to target will be packaged in with your app. That makes your app deployment bigger because you're now deploying more within, but it breaks that dependency on the GAC and the system. So you can have .NET 2 installed via a setup exe on your box, but then when you run it, it will run completely isolated, just like we see with your Node kind of apps and stuff like that. Time to go to iMade1.
I think it is, yeah.
Things never work on that.
I know. Right, let's go to the one we made earlier.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
Just before you go into that, what URL were you hitting before on the link also?
API values, which is the default one, going to
What method are you using?
get. So this,
Capital V for values?
I tried both, just to make sure. Yeah. So here's the one from earlier, which has got a slightly different name. I call it Bag API for other reasons. That's better. Yep. So this has not changed a great deal, other than I've actually created a static list with the actual list of values in. So I've actually implemented some of these methods. Very simple though. It just literally does gets it from the list, post, put, and delete. All do fairly sensible things. I'll talk about the delete in a minute. I've made some more interesting changes to that.
possible with an empty project you have to put something in startup anyway.
Do you know? I think you might be right. Yep, exactly right. I forgot a very simple thing you need to do, which is use. I think that's all we have to do, isn't it? No idea what that's about.
It's not saying by the friend.
Yeah, called Nimsy.co's not happy.
Yeah, that's the other one. Yeah. I think I must have pressed the advanced diagnostics thing as well at some point. This is what I forgot to do. Services. They actually told me in the error message. Copy some basic code from here. So what I'm doing here actually is I'm basically initializing MVC as part of this. That's what this is doing, configure services. So this brings in the MVC part of FirstLookAtDotNet, otherwise it's just a really basic, you can't do Magenta at all.
Is it going to want a DI framework now?
It's got one built in actually. Yeah.
It's Unity, I'm guessing. Or?
I think it's based on Unity. It's not. I don't think it is actually Unity. But, I don't know why they didn't just use Unity. There you go.
Well, if you don't like it, swap it out.
Yeah. As with all of those things, it's pretty easy to swap it out. Okay, right. So that's very simple. Just an API that gets some value, and that's all that was required. If you look at the actual files, there's two code files in here. There's startup CS and values controller CS, and that's it. Particularly, there's no routing table, which is a big deal because it means you don't have a common place to merge out. And you don't have any list of files again, so you don't have to see a Dodge file that you have to merge every time to mount another file. Anything else said on it?
So, at the moment, with .NET, if you recompile, it obviously kills off the application process. Does it reset the application process if you change the file? You were saying you can just change the file with F5.
Yeah, if you change something and press F5, it will have. I can't answer exactly what it will have done under the hood, but it will have recompiled it and it will reload. I don't know if it's killed the process. I don't know how deep it's gone. They are trying to get it to a point where you can run it in a sort of watch mode, you know, and then therefore you might be able to have live refresh stuff further down the line.
I think there's some difficulty with IIS caching and stuff if you post it in IIS.
Yeah.
Just make that a bit more complicated, which is actually what I was going to talk about next. Let's get rid of IIS. So, we want to get rid of IIS. It's bizarre.
Don't do it.
First thing we have to do is tell it what we actually want to use instead. The hosting. Just trying to remember which one it is. server. Web listener. There you go. So this is, I think it's based on, is it libuv, the one that Node's also based on? This web listener. It's just a very, very simple HTTP endpoint. Web server kind of thing. Very, very basic. You can do pretty much anything other than listen to an endpoint for you. And then you can just do some stuff from the command line as well if you want. So if I do kpm install, that's pretty much the same as an npm install. It didn't actually pull the project, which probably means I've done it in the wrong place or anything, so.
Well, when you hit save, it will automatically gone off and pulled in anything you need. So if you pull up your output thing at the bottom, you won't see it now. Well, actually, yeah. Because you pressed save in that push file, it will automatically go and get any npms it needs. If you put a new line in there, you can see it trigger off if you. I don't know.
I'll take your word for it.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we need to give it a command, which I'm just going to copy and paste from the from here, because I forget what it is. I've missed it. So this will look familiar to Node people as well.
You're not going to score at the start.
Is it going to have a script yet?
It's a script called command, which just tells it to use the hosting web listener. Tells it to run on server 5000. Just do that. Just did exactly the same thing that I did yesterday. When you copy and paste, make sure you don't leave an empty character after the word web. Because now the only way to get out of this is to delete it and restart Visual Studio.
It's still a bit funky.
I lost about an hour to that yesterday.
I don't know how you didn't stumble upon that.
It just keeps saying, it keeps giving you a message saying that well, it didn't actually come up in here. That's why I'm zooming on that bit. But the message basically says, unable to load execute command web, available commands web.
If you run it with web in quotes with a space, it probably would work.
It probably would, yeah.
Yeah. So the available commands is the list of everything that's in that JSON file. So you had an available command called web space. So the error was right, just rubbish.
Simple as that, but now running out of the UV rather than out of iOS.
What's its memory footprint like?
Let's have a look. Let's have a quick look. I have no idea what the process would be called.
Probably begins with a K.
Okay.
Yeah.
KLR?
I guess that's it. Probably is that, actually. It could be one of those KLR ones. So, possibly 63 meg for that. Pretty light compared to IIS.
Yes.
Yeah.
So are most things. You don't get the niceties though, as you will. So you know how we got all these classic IIS errors in here. You don't get any of that with the UV one. Which can make debugging a bit frustrating because you don't get stack traces coming up on here as well.
Is that super? Is it hard to live?
Yes, it is. That is the intention. You can run that in a live environment, that particular one. There's also the Kestrel that we talked about, and I mentioned earlier, which is designed to run basically the same thing, but for macOS and Linux. You can actually run, using Mono, you can run your ASP on Linux now. It's quite nice. You had a bit of success with that, didn't you?
I managed to get a Docker container to run a Linux operating system, I can't remember which one it was, and actually get the Hello World.net to run in it, and then call it from my computer to go through Docker to actually get it. It was painful because that's all very early days. Just in the time I was trying it, the Git repo where the Docker container file was, it had about three updates in the 2 days I was trying it, so it was moving under me. I struggled and finally got it there. So it's definitely a future option in the future, far away in the future. So before anyone gets excited that we can start running all this on .NET today, no. But Microsoft, on Linux today, Microsoft are working hand in hand with the Mono guys. Now all of the source code is open source. They don't even have to kind of poke around with it. They can actually just see what it is straight away. Which, as I said, it's open source. If you don't like it, you can submit pull requests. If you want to get involved in the alpha testing of it at the minute, like we were just joking this morning about that web space thing and being a bit rubbish, or we kind of said, well, why don't we just look at fixing it, submit a pull request. That kind of, all that's now open to you if you so wish.
So you say it works with SAS and Less, and is it done through sort of middleware approach, or is it actually just baked in?
It's pre-processed SAS and Less. So you can add a grunt command to your commands here, and you can use grunt or gulp to use the standard grunt config SAS or whatever. Grunt with Less. So you've got exactly the same functionality that you have in Node that produces the CSS again. Okay. So the next thing I was going to show was just had an MVC controller. It's reasonably similar to the API one. It's very basic. Controller, all the same things that you're used to in ASP work as well. So you can put spell string, program name or whatever like that, and it will automatically deserialize it if it's JSON or anything like that. So, and query string, quite good. That's been around in ASP for a while.
How do you select which view engine it's going to use? Is that done through?
I was trying to figure that out this morning. I couldn't figure it out.
Alright.
You can specify which view it uses in here. I'll just put in the name of the view. I think it's the same as current ASP.
Presumably the startup, if you say use .mvc, there must be some way of saying, and then you got the MVC namespace, remove all view engines and add in mustache or something.
Yeah, that's probably it. Yeah.
That code probably hasn't changed, it's just in there by default because there's no code there.
Yeah.
That's one great thing is that because we've already included MVC for the API stuff, that is literally just creating that class is all I needed to do to create a home controller, which, as I haven't got a view for it, actually just returns an error at the moment, saying there's no view. But I'll just create a view for it. Yeah, okay, here's another bug I found this morning as well. You can create a folder, but you can't rename it or set its name when you create it. Visual Studio, can you still debug it?
Still running.
No, I am at the moment, but you couldn't do it
Oh.
when you're editing.
Brilliant.
So you have to do it from. Yeah. The path is quite important for the folder names because of, well, I'll show you the error message. It tells you where it looks for them. By default, it looks for them in these two locations, which is very similar to the old ASP as well. You don't have to configure it, there's a difference. It'd be much easier if I stopped it on. Right, so you can see view. Okay, so it does that. So I'm not going to go into the details of how to actually write the view to the API and stuff like that, because that changed. Now, unless you want to use Angular, because there's Angular support built in here as well. It's got Angular controllers, which I've not really looked at, but it's quite nice as well. So, what I've read about it. And that's pretty much most of what I've said there. Anything anyone wants to see?
Right, have we got a timeline yet for when it's going to be production ready?
I haven't read any.
No, I haven't either. Yeah, I think it is just a case of we're developing it when it's ready. I think they're hoping I'll see something about mid 2015, but then that's just timelines. You know, I think they'd rather get it ready than push it out. But also at the same time, it's so modular now that they can start pushing bits out. So, for example, the new compiler for .NET 6 stuff, the Roslyn compiler, you can download now and plug into Visual Studio 12 through a BizX extension file if you want to start using new compiler features. You can start using bits and pieces and things with a bit of a plan.
Is there anything about 80 on Linux?
We'd like to know that as well.
No, I think the stuff we tried before with Node and stuff, I think it was actually our network. It's an AD problem, so I don't know. I assume it should work, but we haven't got that far. That was something I was going to try actually, and just never gotten further how it will. Because I struggled with that.
How does Rob fit with MS Build? I mean, are they suggesting you use two tools now, or does MS Build just drop away completely?
MS Build is almost non-existent because, yeah, in fact,
I guess if it doesn't have a try to produce DLLs, then MS Build doesn't serve much purpose.
Just uses the cape stuff. The actual building of code is now all done in memory, so you don't deploy assemblies, you just deploy the source code.
They're just relying on the configuration management stuff in Grunt to cover the gaps in terms of what they would cover with web config.
You can do commands in a very similar way, but if you want to use Grunt to do more advanced stuff and use all those plugins, it's really easy to do as well. Just demonstrating the NPM support. It was very good as well. Think of an NPM package. Should probably bring it.
Lodash.
Lodash 2.4.1 apparently is the most recent version.
I don't know if you haven't installed Lodash.
Yeah, you can do that as well. It's the NPM command will run on Windows pretty easy. I've never tried that. I might give it a go.
There was quite a cool little thing I saw at the end of the demo video yesterday, which I'll send the link out to the video that I'm referencing. But he was able to grab the entire source of MVC, stick it in a folder, then in the global, just get it off GitHub, put it in a folder, and in the global JSON, you can reference it, and it will just pull it into the project. So if you want to change something in MVC, for example, you would, but if you did, you can, and it's all now just part of your project. It's all self-contained. So as we got saying earlier about self-contained versions and stuff.
You're looking at dev dependencies.
That's not what we want to use.
Yeah. That's weird.
That seems to be NPM not
You need to
played.
use their key. One.
Maybe that would be NuGet, wouldn't it?
Oh, yeah.
NuGet wouldn't, unless it was a moment NuGet wouldn't know about it.
What are you trying to do?
Is that the right folder, Andy?
Yeah.
That's what I thought it was, but yeah, you get it.
It seems to be NPM playing up. Oh, there we go. Something happened. Downloaded a bunch of things. We can now do grunt. The grunt file support's quite good as well.
You really want to rename that project.
Rename the
What
project.
you really want to do is rename that project.
Being sorry.
Very standard grunt config file.
Is there any integration into Visual Studio?
Basically all the building in inverted commas happens from a command line down here anyway. So if you can run it from the command line, it runs from
You
there.
can tell it when you want, when
Yeah,
you save
so
on
when
this
you-
task and things like that.
Probably I haven't looked at it.
I haven't gone into it a great deal, but if you look in here, if you look in the build stuff in here, actually there's not much in the build. If you go to the debug, there's you can choose any of the commands that are in that command thing for it to run.
Cool.
And that will automatically run any pre-build scripts as well. You've got configured in the project basic file.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing. Yeah.
So I'm guessing that's updating, what file is that updating in that?
So this
The project JSON file, or is it that
this is
kproj
this is
file?
the kproj file that
Right.
changes when you edit in here. So this list of tasks just comes from the actual
Yeah.
project JSON file. So yeah, now I can debug.
I wouldn't be surprised about kproj merged into a JSON file. It just seems now out on its own as an XML file or like an RTF.
So
It might
does-
change that. I don't know.
So how is Microsoft managing its dependency on Node.js here then? Is it just you've got to install Node.js, or does it try and do it for you, or?
Yeah,
You do it for you. I think if you haven't got it, I think Visual Studio either includes it or it'll pull it. I think. I actually don't know.
because when you did that deploy, you had to install Node, didn't you? yourself?
Box, yeah. So when I created the Docker container, I started off with a container that had no node on it, and then when I tried it, it then fell over, so I had to then put node onto the container. And, yeah,
It'll be
so
interesting to see how it works in terms of Node's community's propensity for just making backwards incompatible changes on vague whims.
Yeah, I think some things like Node you do have to install to do, but ironically, the thing you don't have to install now is any .NET frameworks. Because they will all pull down all the .NET libraries. Put down.
You still kind of want to
So
you still kind of want to do it.
you
if it's
generally
if it's there and installed, it'll probably use it. But if
You specify it.
it's all in, it will actually pull. This is what I mentioned earlier. They've now got this core.
It's like project you choose, isn't it?
That if you go to your packages folder, probably to see it very well on that screen, but
I was looking for that a second ago. It's not-
Still have an
all
old
the way to
school
the
.NET
top.
project, can't you?
that one should be. Oh,
Yeah, I was looking for that as well.
where's it? Put it?
I don't know where that's gone.
What's in source? Is it not in there? So there should be a folder with packages in it,
Yeah, I couldn't find it.
and it'll have all the packages,
Yeah.
and a bit node style with nested stuff as well. So if you want, I don't know, if you pull in MVC and it needs something, I can't think what it might need, but Unity or something, it will pull that in as well and do it node style, and all of that should then be in that folder that's self-contained, and you can put the whole app on a USB stick and put it onto Stu's laptop that's never had .NET on it. That kind of thing.
Have they mentioned anything new? Anything in terms of migration tools? Because that would be quite scary.
So if you use the .NET Core library, you should be fine. There shouldn't be a lot that you need to change from what you've got to where you
Well, in
go.
terms of project structure and stuff, you know, like let's say you took one of our more up-to-date projects and you wanted to move to this shiny new world, or is it new projects only type job?
They haven't, but I'm going to guess there isn't a migration. It's either you're starting clean, or you could use some of the features, but you're not going to get the whole project structure. It's not like opening a Visual Studio 10 in 12 and getting a migration thing. It's quite a breaking change.
There's no system that web items.
Well, it needs to kill that off. It was a testing nightmare, but big breaking change.
Yeah. If you start going to, if you want to use what they're calling the cloud optimized package, then if you do have stuff in your project that, even if you were able to copy it across, if you've got breaking stuff like charts and drawings and stuff, is one example that I'm reading. All of that kind of systems.drawing won't be in there because it's server optimized, it's stuff that servers. But yeah, it's probably just worth having a look at some of the videos and tutorials, grab a copy of it, probably put it on a virtual machine rather than onto your dev box and stuff up your Studio 12.
It's miles better than it was, but there's a few compatibilities to be a multiple version.
Yeah.
It's not like we had 2005, 2008.
It's definitely not ready for production. You can see it on GitHub with all the issues and stuff. But,
which is a big thing in itself. You can actually see the issues of GitHub.
Yeah.
Because that's where they do all their good tracking.
No.
They have to take off code blocks and do it again.
Why not?
What team published it?
Well, TFS supposed to get that. No, I don't know. That's it. Any questions? Anything else you talk about? Anything you want to look at? You think it looks good? Looks bad?
Looks interesting.
Do they know where it's going to be very fair?
Not really.
It's not changing.
Yeah, you never know.
So is there a migration Does it come with .NET?
I don't have one knows.
Right, let's get out of it.
Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.